Hi, my name is Kiami Blankman, and this is my Module 7 reflection. And the first question asked, after watching the lecture and reading the articles, describe your thoughts toward online learning at the K through 12 level. So after watching the videos and reading all the articles, at first I wasn't too fond of the online educational learning, but after watching it all, and I can now see how beneficial it is to some students. It's just like being in a regular classroom, just not in person, obviously. But my overall thoughts towards it, it's better than it was before. I think it's great that students can now learn online in a different setting. Some students may learn better this way, and some students may not. So it's great to have that option of both inside and outside the classroom. Do you think it's appropriate for students to complete online learning, and what parameters should be in place? I think it is appropriate for students to complete online learning. It just gives them, again, a different learning environment that you may need in the future. For example, I had a class in high school and it was all online learning, and when we went to class, we then asked our teacher questions and we did our assignment that way, but our overall classroom and learning environment was online and watching videos, and I think it was great. It was a different learning environment for me, and it definitely helped for in the future. For example, now that I'm in college and taking online classes, it was grateful to have that in the past. The parameters that should be in place should probably be the same rules and regulations that you would have in your classroom. For example, no cheating, and you want to implement the same things you do inside the classroom as you would online. So just the same rules and guidelines you would online, or as you would in a classroom. Do you think every state should require students to complete an online course prior to high school graduation? I do. Going back to my online course in high school, again, it was very beneficial to my overall learning. It was tough at first, but at the end I was glad I did have that environment. It was a great way to get more involved, and it kept me engaged throughout the whole class, and yeah, it was just better overall. Like, I wasn't spacing out in class, and it kept me focused, and it kept me wanting to know more about each subject. So I do think that each state should require students to complete an online course prior to high school graduation. So I do think it would be beneficial. Question number 2, what did you learn most from the K-12 video in Lawrence virtual school brochure? So what I learned most from those two is that basically the online courses is just like being in a regular classroom. Like, it made it look super easy and simple, especially looking over the brochure. Like, the questions that I had where I was reading it was answered at the bottom, so it was super helpful, and it just prepares you for the future. Like the K through 12 video, one of the parents' daughter was already using Blackboard, and that's something that we use today in college, so it helps their student prepare them for the future in college and their career. So I think that those two things is probably what I learned most from, is just that you can do everything that you can inside a classroom online, and probably even more online, which was kind of cool, because as a teacher you want to try to do most inside the classroom, but it was kind of cool to see that you can go even further on your online courses and on your online activities than you can in the classroom, which was cool to see and cool to read about. Question number 3, describe your experience working with the LMS. Which system did you choose to work with, and why? What did you like or dislike about the system, and how could you use the LM system as a future educator? So my experience working with the LMS system was kind of confusing at first. I picked one that I've used in the past with a couple of my classes, like in high school. I did Edmodo, and that is why I chose to work with it. It was because I used it in the past as a student, and it was kind of cool to see. It's kind of like Facebook in a way, so it was easy as students to go through and to access and use. But it was kind of, like I said, kind of confusing at first, but once I was messing around with it from a teacher standpoint of view, it was a lot easier and a lot simpler to use after I messed around with it a little bit, so it wasn't bad working with it. What did I like or dislike about the system? I really like how it looks like Facebook, so you can post to it and you can have people make comments. So one of my activities I created was for 6th grade science, and it was the definitions of independent and dependent variables. So I did the definitions and I said, this is how I remember it and how can you remember it. This allowed the students to then reply to my post and say, this is how I remember it, and then they could see all the other students post, and then they can see what other ways they can use to remember independent and dependent variables. So I did like that about it, and then you can go on and take a quiz or a poll. So that's what I really like about it. What I dislike about it is that you have to upload everything. I wish there was a way you could just create an activity or a lesson just right on there, kind of like Quua or what we did in the past, where we could create an activity and it just uploads on there and we can send it out. So I think that would probably be a lot easier, so that way you don't have to keep going back through different systems. You can just stay on the same website and just upload and create an assignment or lesson that way. How can I use this system in the future as a future educator? Like I said, I can create, depending on what age level I teach, I can use the system in many different ways. For example, creating polls or discussion boards like the one I created, just to see what students can say about it and where they're at on different subjects. And I can create quizzes for them to answer as well, and it's just another form of engagement instead of just paper pencil. So I can see myself using this a lot in the future, and even other different websites such as Google Classroom as well. There's a lot of stuff that I can use in the future that would only benefit me and the students. So this is my reflection over this module.